Right.
Yeah, hi, Professor. Like we are going to present today, and our group members are Pranagit, Prapurna, and myself, Sahiti. So today we are going to present on the topic. Sri, can you go over to the next slide? Yeah, today we are going to present on the topic risk assessment of additional works in the railway construction investments using the Bayes network. And this paper is presented by Leigh Snake and Philip Junavik. So today we are going to present on this topic. Moving on to the next slide to introduce on this topic. So currently a large EU project is being implemented in Poland with the modernization of railway network throughout the country. So as part of the planned investments, constructions and the reconstruction and modernization, so a 9,000 kilometer of railway lines are planned to have constructed across the country. Performing such an ambitious plan will involve many risks, including the possibility of unforeseen or any additional works. Choosing a right management strategy will minimize the negative effects of the risk and guarantee the implementation of the investment objectives. So, implementation of these large infrastructure construction projects, according to the Sustainable Development of Goals, is a complex process and it consists of many stages. The large investments can take up to several years from the moment of creating the initial concept until the commissioning of projects. So situations which are related to the uncertainties occurring during the project implementation are referred as risks, whereas while actions that are taken to optimize the impact of this risk assessment is known as risk mitigation. And a properly selected risk management strategy taking into account all the scenarios and dealing with all the types of risk will guarantee the implementation in a specified time and within the budget of the planned construction investment. So what the risks are also known as the uncertainties that will happen during the project. And regardless of what is the method that we took for the risk management, all the strategies, provisions, principles, and the guidelines that are followed in this railway construction project is based on the ISO standard. And moving on to the next slide. So here, the risk qualitative and quantitative research is conducted to determine the possibility of the risk, and some of the dependent factors that are initiated during the project implementation is like type and size of the project, legal and political conditions of the project, and the construction environment. So the risk. What is risk according to the ISO standard is a combination of events and consequences and the related probability of occurrence. The change of the cost of the projects is due to the effect of the emerging risk, and below are some of the considerations of each stage in the risk management strategy. They are like specialized softwares, risk identification, assessment, and determining the risk validity. All these steps are very crucial in the risk analysis phase. And for the risk assessment, Bayesian networks and fuzzy network approaches are used. Moving on to the next slide. So these are like the risk management process steps. As we see here, we have like 5 stages, which are establishing the context, risk assessment, which in turn includes the risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, and the risk treatment. There are like many different types of risk, which are like legal risk, environmental risk, market risk, regulatory risk, and so on. So it's very important for us to identify as many risk factors as possible and analyze those risks and then evaluate the risk. And while doing all three phases, it's very important we monitor and review this risk simultaneously, and also we communicate and consult regarding the risk, and we do a risk assessment in a clear manner, and then we finally treat the risk. And all these processes which are mentioned here are according to the ISO 31000 standard. Moving on to the next slide. This is like the framework model that is needed for the risk assessment. So the selection of the appropriate techniques, it depends upon the characteristics of the risk that is being executed. So according to the ISO standard, below are the 3 stages, the successive stages for the risk mitigation, for the risk framework, that is risk identification, risk analysis, and the risk evaluation. And for assessing the risk of the additional works in this railway construction project, structured and semi-structured interview method is used at the risk identification stage. And for the risk analysis, Bayesian statistics and the Bayesian network methods are used. Finally, for the risk evaluation, consequence of probability matrix is used. So the choice of these above methods is dictated by the current state of knowledge regarding the additional works that are involved in this railway investment and the construction project. And to obtain the input data on this issue, the expert knowledge is collected using this structured and semi-structured interviews method. And performing the risk evaluation will help us to determine the level of risk to carry out the activities aimed at each level of the risk identification stage. So all these stages are like involved in this railway construction investment project. Moving forward, my teammate Pranay will continue. Thank you. Pranay, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. The next topic is about identification of risk analysis of additional works in railway projects. There are mainly four analysis methods we can observe here, like identifying the elements that lead to the information, formation of new works in railway infrastructures, building investments, and likelihood of their happening, and identifying the sort of construction activities that may occur in results of extra railway infrastructures, and identifying most critical factors, describing new railway infrastructure projects and a period of extinction for these purposes. Individually, direct interviews with 5 players in building processes who deal with the construction of railway infrastructure in Poland were done. After creating the questionnaires, the experts were carefully chosen and research was conducted through interviews. And the writers purposefully chosen each reply to represent a different company. People from larger construction enterprises were chosen for the study because they had relevant experience, seniority, and practice. The implementation of such projects were given responses and utilized to identify the risk variables as well as qualitative and quantitative description for new types of buildings activities that may have emerged. In addition, these respondents mentioned the impact of individual cases of additional works on appearances of additional costs during the implementation of a building investment and the planning of the construction and assembly work periods. Each response was also given a likelihood of occurrence expressed in percent by respondents. Moving on to the next slide. Here we have the risk identification for additional works or results. We have tabulated in a way. We can see here are two factors. The factor for additional works and for work occurrences. Here in additional works, we can see there are many factors like bad organization of works, which is the most like 67% of the time. It is the risk identification factor. And we have substantiated errors and incompletion of project documentations and failure to provide a track reviews and delaying the supplies of the building materials. In additional work occurrences, we have platform and building works and work related to reconstruction and road works and engineering object works. In some cases, the expert subjective assessment did not completely cover the probability. However, after analyzing this was deemed to justified and met with acceptance. It was decided to build the proposed model using this method. In accordance with the standard guidelines, risk identification should include the following elements, which are risk identification, risk assessment of consequences, assessment of public scenarios. The respondents of these responses were categorized based on the proposed schemes. As a result, 3 groups were formed. The risk category was divided into 2 parts. Basically, it is associated with appearance of additional works and associated with occurrence of special types of additional works. The process of this risk identification was completed with the division of elements into groups. Yeah, the next slide. Here, the next topic is risk analysis and the Bayesian statistics and the Bayesian network method that are used. It is basically It is the study of finding the other selected factors whose likelihood of occurrence was most highly rated. The past and the participants and respondents in this development risk assessment model for future works. These are the various factors that are used in the Bayesian statistics. Like we have discussed in the previous slide, it consists of bad organization of work and substantiation errors and network works and engineering object works, roads and extension of individual investments. The Bayesian network method was chosen for risk modeling because it appears to be the most appropriate one for the problems at hand, because it is based on the probability of events and allows the introduction of new information into the model using expert knowledge or historical data. The individual steps are as follows. The constructing the Bayesian network methods, nodes, assigning the relationship to the specific nodes, and assigning probabilities to the events. The software, the Netica software used in this Bayesian network was used to create the model in the form of a tree. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, this is the next topic is the creation of nodes for this Bayesian network we discussed. The nodes of the Bayesian networks is created using risk factors and additional works. Type of the additional works and consequences occurrence in this phenomenon. There are 9 nodes in this risk assessment model. Each of them was assigned a distinct events that corresponded to the characteristics of a specific node. The correct structure of the Bayesian network is determined by the relationship of the individual nodes in the network. So far, various approaches have been used that are dependent on many variables, including but not limited to the characteristics of phenomenon being studied, data availability, and the problem complexity. Many researchers also emphasize that building the web is an interactive process because the problem has never been studied using a Bayesian network. The others lack a primary network that can be modified, individual node relationships that can be used. The study's uniqueness, additional works on this node was proposed as a separate node because determining the presence of absence was used in this additional works as an important context of the work. Here we can see the probabilities of assigning events. Furthermore, the Bayesian network is distinguished by the fact that the event of the initiating nodes are introduced directly by determining the probability level. Other nodes linked by the mutual relationships must be described using conditional probabilities based on the chain method. This necessitates the others analyzing all the problems, combining of sequential events and determining the probabilities and the conditional probabilities in the tabulated way. In the table, we can see the assigning event probabilities. The model propose operation as cities assigning. Like we can see errors of project documentation, changes by the investors, and bad network optimization occurrences and does not occurrences. Yeah, the next topics will be discussed by my teammates.
Here we go through the performing calculations. The fundamental relationship in the construction of the Bayesian network is the Thomas Bayesian theorem, which binds the conditional probabilities of two events conditioning each other. We can calculate the probabilities of all events in the network by applying this theorem. It's a series of events. After preparing the models, create the working of Bayes network. Calculations were carried out, and the conditional probabilities was performed using the Netica software, and the calculations of functioning network that can be used for the next stage of the risk assessment evaluation. Here's the formulas for that, and here A and B are the events, and probability of A occurring if event B occur. That's the A intersection B. All depends upon the probabilities A union and A intersection. Here is a risk evaluation. Build a risk assessment matrix, and here this method corresponds to the work assumption, which expresses risk of a product and the probability and its consequences. There are 5 intervals was proposed to correspond to the assumed probability levels of each event probability, while 3 intervals were proposed to characterize event effects which are associated with the events that require more time to implement. Here you can see the rare, unlikely, possible, likely, and almost certain. Here you can see the probability and point values. This is the event and this is the probability, this is the point value. Here you go, the risk assessment necessities. There are low risk, medium risk, high risk, and extremely high risk. These applications of Bayes network to the discussed problems allow us to use the mathematical methods like unique capabilities in the formula of analysis. And it is based upon the original models of relationships. And it can be developed in addition to the Bayes event probabilities. And here you can see the low, medium, high. For it is low risk, it is medium risk, it is high risk, and it is extremely high risk. And you can see the probability of unlikely, possible, likely, and almost certain. And here you can see the risk mitigation proposal. In this, we have 4 types. First is risk avoidance, risk transfer, risk mitigation, and risk acceptance. And this plan of action is selected to ensure that the actions taken are as effective as possible. Here is a conclusion part. And from all these papers, what we have collected is these methods will help us to construct complex projects, the projected budget and time. And the Bayes network can be used to create more factors and the effect of risk of the additional works. And here are the references we go through. And thank you.